the top 5 most degenerate cards in the whole game, currently legal in this April 2014 ban list. That's what we'll be going by. Now, what is a degenerate card? Now, a degenerate card isn't just something that you don't like, you know. MST isn't degenerate because it like ruined that combo for you that one time, that one duel. That's not what degenerate is. Degenerate is, let's say, characterized by having lost all physical, mental, or moral qualities considered normal, showing evidence of decline perhaps in level of skill in this context. Things that don't let you play the game, essentially. So, things like Solemn Warning, Torrential Tribute, these cards are annoying when they hit you at the right time, but they're not degenerate, they are part of the game, they are one-offs, they are not searchable. They are just, like, good cards. Degenerate, as we will be counting down, is things that completely and utterly lock your opponent out of the game, and game 1, you are likely to have literally 0 to very, very few responses to the card that they're using against you. Now, obviously, there has to be some kind of logic and forethought put into like how you reach the conclusion of why a card is degenerate. Yes, something might have pissed you off really badly one time and made you lose an important game, and that doesn't mean the card is degenerate. It could have just been this one-off that really annoyed you. So we have to look at things for number 1, ease of access. How quickly can I get to this card? Now, if this is just some one-off in my deck that I might draw because I sided it in, is that really that potent of a card? Like, yeah, I mean, it might completely shut my opponent out of the game, but if I can't get to it, if I have no way to search it, if I have no way for my deck to thin to the point where I can get it, what is the point? I mean, it's great as a one-off and it's going to be great when you draw it, but like, it's obviously not that bad if it's like not even able to be searched, right? Well, next is recurrence. Now, what this means is, okay, so I've got my card out, and my opponent has managed to remove it. Now, that's a problem, but what makes a card really degenerate in this example would be it would somehow find a way to come back onto the field. Can I bring it another copy out of my deck? Can I just make another one? Can I recycle it out of my graveyard somehow? A card that can just be reused over and over again, even when your opponent manages to remove multiple copies of it, that is really, really annoying, and it comes a point where you have to ask yourself, like, is this thing really healthy for the game? Now, on to what I feel is the most important aspect of what makes a card really good, or in this case, really, really degenerate, is longevity. Now, once I have my degenerate, make my opponent suicidal card out on the field, how well can I protect it? If I can't, like, do anything about this card, in terms of like, you know, vulnerability to MST or Direwolf or something like that, then obviously the card isn't as potent as it could be, right? But if a card can be protected somehow, say with other support such as spells and traps that I'm not going to spoil for you in the countdown, but you know, there are ways that certain cards can be protected by other cards. That also is what makes a card very strong. Number 5, drag down to the grave. Okay, I know a lot of people are going to be flaming right now, saying things like, oh, you suck for losing to Dark World and stuff, but it's not about whether the deck is good enough to, like, win, like, most competitions. I mean, it kind of has some success at the beginning of formats. Other than that, Dark World doesn't really do much. But I'm talking about cards that are, you know, unhealthy right now, and yeah, like, Dark World players don't even use drag down, but I'm just talking about how this card is, like, not even unfair, it's just so irritating, and it just takes no, like, planning or, like, real skill involved. I mean, you just kind of, like, wait until you've got 4 Dark World monsters in your hand, you set your back row, and, you know, when your opponent starts sending their back row before their battle phase, you know you're about to get dragged down, and you discard a card out of their hand. Oh, well, it doesn't do anything, because now you've just made them go plus. So they're just sitting there picking off your best cards one by one, because let's be honest, when they have drag down, they're going to draw the other drag down because, well, I don't know, the deck seems to like draw 50 cards in one turn. There's a reason Dark World Exodia like kind of like does things sometimes, occasionally. The deck has a lot of draw power. Chances are they're going to get that second drag down soon. And then combining this with Mind Crush, oh my god, it's it's awful. It is really just so annoying to be a victim of. Okay, so give this card a bit of rating, I suppose. Now, in terms of ease of access, it's not easy to get a hold of. Maximum this card is played in 3 ofs, so can't be searched because it's not an archetype kind of card. But the deck that abuses it most has so much draw power that they're gonna get to it eventually, you know. But what makes this card really annoying is that even though you're seeing your opponent's hand, you know they're just setting the most important ones so that you can't see, and then the ones that you do discard at their hand, well, they're just gonna plus off it. They're gonna pop your back row. They're gonna search a card. They're gonna draw a card. Ugh, yeah. So recurrence again. It doesn't have too much of like this card isn't too easy to get access to. This card isn't too easy to recur, but I mean, the deck draws a lot, so that really makes up for like kind of not being able to be searched. And finally, longevity. Okay, this card is a one-off activation, so you can't really count longevity, but you can sort of look at it in the sense that how much is it going to impact the game? I mean, if they're picking off your best cards from your hand, and okay, your opponent needs to kind of know your deck and how it works. If they're picking off the best cards out of your hands, then there isn't really much you can do, because in the long term, not having those cards that they picked off out of your hand is probably gonna like severely hinder you. Number 4, Soul Charge. What were Konami thinking when they made this card? You know what's really ironic about this card? Literally like 2 weeks or something before this thing was announced or leaked or whatever, they banned rekindling. Sorry, limited rekindling. And then they just went, okay, like, your rekindling is bad for the game because, you know, you can just spam all these monsters and attack for game. And then they were like, oh, you know what, let's just make rekindling for everyone. But, you know, you don't get your battle phase, but who cares if you don't get your battle phase? Anyway, I have another video on why Soul Charge is broken. Let's just talk quickly about why his card is unhealthy. A lot of duels right now just kind of boil down to who can race to Soul Charge first. Some decks can just take advantage of this thing so well, like Dragons, Infernity. It's unbelievable just how many plays this thing opens up for certain decks. Well, anyway, ease of access. This card is, again, not easy to get to because it's not searchable, it's not part of an archetype. But a lot of decks today, most decks play it in 3s, so, you know, you're going to get it eventually. Recurrence, there's not really any way to recycle it, so I mean it's not that great in those terms. Longevity, this is where this card really shines. You're setting up a board, ideally a board that's going to be so broken that you're going to win next turn because you're just going to attack and negate and remove everything with those cards. Like, that's the whole point of Soul Charge. You set up a board so impenetrable that no matter what your opponent top decks, they have absolutely no out. That's why this card is absolutely ridiculous. Don't know why this card was made. I mean, Monster Reborn's banned, but Monster Reborn's degenerate, drugged up, smack addict cousin Soul Charge is at 3. I don't understand the logic. Number 3, Ophion. So, Ophion itself today is really not that hard to deal with. In fact, Ophion's really easy to deal with today. Problem is, some decks don't have a game 1 answer to Ophion. That's the issue here. Now, any card that says you cannot or neither player can is probably going to be very annoying. Because, let's be honest, just because it says neither player can, well, it affects both players. Doesn't matter because the other player using it probably isn't using cards that is affected by said effect. Now, like I said, Ophion is not too hard to get over today. Things like hands and stuff being a very good side deck choice for dragons now. It's not an issue anymore. But I mean, Evilswarm is still a deck that can, you know, do very well. It searches its own pandemic. I mean, it searches its own lance. So in terms of ease of access, well, if you're playing Evilswarm, this card is very easy to get to. In fact, it's the turn 1 play 90% of the game, 90% of the time. Recurrence, very easy to bring out again and again. There's a reason Evilswarm players play this card at 3, because you go through them so quick. And longevity, again, this card is just like, I mean, it's so easy to protect. You've got things like your Forbidden Lances, you've got like Macrocosmos and Defissure for hands trying to crash into you. And the deck itself plays so much back row that Ophion is really like safe a lot of the time. The reason I decided to include it is because it gets like a 5-star rating in every category. It is easy to make, it is easy to bring back, it is easy to protect. It's just like it's a good card. I'll give you that. As a boss monster, it's really good. But the secondary effect, not being able to special summon anything above level 5, it's pretty tough for a lot of decks to get over game 1. Sometimes even game 2 and 3 if Evilswarm side correctly, because they know they're going to be siding in those hands, so they're just going to counter side. And yeah, so I mean, a lot of decks really suffer to this thing. Number 2, skill drain. So already I can hear a lot of people screaming at me thinking, well, you know, use your MST. The problem here is that you can't just give an out to every card on this list. Every card does have an out. It would be, if a card didn't have an out, it would be broken. The problem is you can't rely on drawing on your MST. Okay, you play it in 3s. There's a high chance you're going to draw it. The thing is, this is also a high chance you're going to draw multiple skill drains. So it's kind of like, do we just base this on luck? Not really. We need to look at ulterior ways to get rid of skill drain. Now, certain decks can go into things like Dracosac and pop skill drain. Rank 4 decks can Direwolf pop problem cards. The thing with skill drain is that it's really hard for some decks to actually get rid of this outside of effects. They're essentially forcing their opponent to just sit and wait till they draw that MST or Dust Tornado. You know, or Twister if your deck really hates skill drain that much. It's just such a problem card because it's at 3, I feel. Now, if Konami found it fit to put its cousin, Soul Drain, to 1, it should give you an idea of just how powerful skill drain is, especially when the format is very much an effect format. It doesn't make sense why this thing is still at 3. Anyway, longevity, recurrence, these things fall under the same category as my previous cards. They're not easy to get to and they're not easy to draw into, they're not searchable, etc, etc. You know, but you play them in multiples, and when you do see them, the longevity impact it has on the game is absolutely tremendous, because this card is just, if your opponent can't get an out to this, they've probably lost. All you really need, as say for example a dragon player, is to take advantage of this card for like 2 turns, 3 turns, and you've probably won. Number 1, the most degenerate card in the game, personally I feel, is Kaiser Coliseum. Now, okay, this thing, again, I'm not going to get into the whole just MST debate because I've already gone over that under skill drain. This thing, it really hinders your plays. And there only really is like one deck currently that can really abuse Kaiser Coliseum, and it's a powerful deck at that. Maybe I'm just salty that this deck gives me a problem because I play a combo deck and Kaiser doesn't do very nice things to combo decks. Again, this thing suffers from the whole I can't even pop it issue. So yeah, I can't make like a rank 4 Direwolf because my opponent's just sitting on 1 monster. I can't do anything to like get over that monster because I can't summon more monsters to overlay or synchro or whatever. This card is essentially boils down to the fact that it essentially says you can't. Cards that say you cannot or your opponent cannot just are extremely unhealthy. I could understand if it was like a one-off like counter trap or something that just like lasted for a turn, but something that just sits there laughing at you, and then when they put up like 2 of them, you kind of sit there crying inside and wondering why you still play this game. It's Kaiser is really, you know, it comes to, I categorize this into like the you can't category, like I've just mentioned. Cards that say you cannot or your opponent cannot or neither player can, they just generally are pretty unfair. Anyway, I've rambled on enough, and I've given my reasons, I've given my logic. If you disagree, that's fine. I'd like to hear why, and I'd like to hear your opinions, and maybe if there's anything I missed out or should have included, feel free to include in the description, etc, etc. So, thanks for listening, and comment, like, subscribe, etc. Goodbye.